Hi everybody, this is Matthew from Disaster Area Designs. I'm going to do a short demonstration today of our new Pedalboard switcher and MIDI controller. You can see it here on the pedalboard at the lower right. It's a 10-inch by 2-inch by 2.5-inch box. It's got 5 effects loops, buffered input, TRS switching jack for controlling an amplifier or other effects devices, and MIDI in and MIDI out. So it can be used to control MIDI capable effects or rack units. The pedalboard we're using today is fairly representative. It contains an Electro-Harmonix micropog, a modified Ibanez TS10 tube screamer, a Dean Markley Overlord, which is a tube-based pedal similar to the TubeWorks Real Tube, a Ross DP combination, which is a phaser and distortion in one, and a Boss CE3 chorus. The Strymon timeline, which you see at the upper left, is not being run through any of the switcher's effects loops. It's instead being controlled via MIDI. The amplifier we're using today for testing is a 60s Kalamazoo Reverb 12, and we're going to be using a Japan Fender 52 reissue Telecaster from the mid-80s. Let's talk about how the switcher works for a few minutes. The guitar signal comes in through the patch cable at the right side. It runs through the device's buffer, and then it runs through its 5 effects loops. Each effects loop is selectable individually or can be programmed to engage in any combination with any of the other effects loops. Pressing one of the foot switches engages one or more of the effects loops, can engage the amp's own settings, and as you can see, changes the program on the Strymon timeline on the upper left. So we're actually controlling all of this from this small box on the lower right. Pressing the active button again bypasses the unit. When the unit goes into bypass, the TRS contacts are set to a preset setting and MIDI program change 0 is set. This is nice because if you're using something like a timeline or a time factor and you have, for example, an always on delay sound, you can see on mine I'm using the mellow, which is set to program 00A. That program will always be available. So even when you're in a bypass mode, you could still have your always on delay sound. If you prefer to have nothing here, you can set up a blank patch in the Strymon timeline, or you can program the switcher to send out the MIDI CC continuous controller message to bypass the timeline. Bypassing the timeline, if it's set to true bypass, uses a relay, so in effect the entire board is bypassed. So let's talk about how to create an effects loop here, how to create a setting. The first thing we need to do is press a button when we're in program mode. So when the center light is not blinking, we're in program mode. So if we press the rightmost button, we engage program 1. You can see we've set the timeline to its first program here, which is 00B Sweet 16ths. And then if you watch the LEDs when the board switches, you can see that only the second loop is on. So the second loop contains the tube screamer. You can hear we're running clean, and then when we engage the first loop, we've got the tube screamer on. In addition, you can hear the delay from the Strymon timeline there, very subtle. Our second patch contains no effects loops. You'll notice none of the LEDs are lit on the bottom row, but the red LED is lit on the center switch. What that shows is that we've actually got the amp's tremolo engaged and its reverb. So we're running a clean patch here, no effects except for the amp's own effects. Third patch, if you can see here, is the third loop only, and the green LED is on, so only the Overlord is engaged here. The fourth loop I'm engaging just the DP combination. And the Strymon timeline. And then finally the fifth loop, the first and fifth loops are on, so we're using the micropog and the chorus. And pressing the active patch sends the unit into bypass. So there you go. It's very easy to configure a set of effects and timeline patch and amp settings into a preset. So let's go over how we do that. We're going to go to the second bank, which is shown by the green LED. So when we press these buttons on the timeline here, you see Pan 8s, wow, 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 dirty bucket, etc. So these are slightly higher patches. So let's create a patch using this Pan 8s. So we've got our patch set up. We press and hold the center switch, and you can see we have, there we go. So we have no effects loops on now. We do have the amp reverb on. We'll turn that off. Okay. And for example, let's say we wanted to have the tube screamer on. When we've got what we want, we save it. So to save, you press and hold any of the bottom row. Just be aware that when you save a patch, it saves to a patch with a fixed MIDI program location. So if you want to have this patch come up with this same delay setting, which is this Pan 8s, you have to save it to the first patch. In other words, the patch we started with. So press and hold, the LED flashes, and we press and hold the center button to get into preset mode. So you can see we're bypassed, and when we press the button, we've turned on the second loop, which is the tube screamer, and the Pan 8s preset on the timeline. There you go. So it's very easy to set up a preset, to recall your presets, and you've got 3 banks of 5 presets each for a total of 15, plus the fourth bank is the MIDI only bank, and we'll cover that in another video.